Yo, what's going on? Welcome back to another edition of the Sinkhole with your admins, myself, Mark, and Andrew, who couldn't make it so far. He might be here at the halfway point, but we're just holding down in the meantime. Today's a very we have a special guest. Now, I know I always say that, but and I've enjoyed all the guests so far, and I will enjoy all the guests to come in the future. But this is an individual I've seen it all happen in real time. I've seen him as a local unsigned artist, just doing his thing. He got signed to an indie label, which we'll talk about, and now he's killing it in the sync world with placements, Black Panther, Netflix, ABC, Call of Duty. He's just killing in the sync world, and I'm privileged just to have him here. He's a very busy man. So I just want to introduce a friend of the room, Deraj, man. Thank you for joining us, bro.
What's up, man? Man, I'm beyond excited to be here. First of all, I appreciate y'all having me. I love talking sync and all things related. So yeah, man, let's have some fun, dude.
Yeah, man. And like before we dive in, like I just wanted to like commend you, bro. Like you have been an awesome picture of diligence, perseverance, grind, work ethic over the last I want to say 10 plus years since I've known you, man. Just your obstacles with and with your career, and just kind of just knowing how to pivot and when to pivot. We'll get into that, but man, I just want to commend you, bro. You've been doing level at a high art, especially like in the context of like Orlando area, like pre-sync. Yeah. You were always one, man, that you were definitely set apart, man. You just always did music at a high level, even as a local artist, man. So like salute to you, bro. Seriously.
Nah, boy, I appreciate it, man. And I think this kind of makes it even more special. See, y'all know him as Terrell. Like I'll forever know him as commissary. So that like we go, it's so crazy to think about that too, man. Like
it is, bro. It is.
I moved down to Florida late 2007. I feel like we met a couple of years after that.
Surely, yeah, I want to say maybe 09.
Yeah, like
09, right something like that. Yeah,
right when I was graduating college. And it's so funny because like Terrell was kind of like the prototype because he had so many shows like in and around Orlando.
Every weekend.
I was playing catch up, man. So I really appreciate that, man. Like and I'm sure we'll get into it, but it's been a really interesting, unplanned journey from kind of all of the nuances of just how I've gotten to where I've gotten. But nah, bro, I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no problem, man. It's our honor to have you here, man. So, as you said, you moved to Orlando about in 07. You born in Virginia, raised in Virginia, had some time in Maryland. Like, when did Deraj like discover his love for music? Because you've done it at such a high level for so long. Like, when did that first taste of music interest spark for you?
Yeah, for me, it was it was my oldest brother who really, I guess, instilled it in me. And it was really just like, I always say, his little brother wanted to be like big brother. I was probably, second, third grade or something like that. And he had a collective that he was with. They were called E Nation. I always kind of compare him to like, if the like PG County, Maryland had like the equivalent of like a Wu-Tang. They just had so many dudes that was like a part of their crew. And so me being young and impressionable, I just loved whatever they were doing. They would come around to the house, and that kind of started. So whatever he liked, I liked. I wrote my first rap when I was like 9. So I mean that's where it started, and it kind of evolved into it being my own passion. My oldest brother kicked it off for me, and then my dad remarried. So when he remarried, I gained a new brother. So I had a stepbrother, and him and I were closer in age. And so we started to learn how to produce and, started rapping just for fun. This is like back in the day when, actually before we started producing, like this wasn't, I don't say pre-internet, but like accessible internet and instrumentals and all that kind of stuff. Like we used to try to like make beats off of like the cassette tape, where like we would listen to the radio, and we have like a dual cassette tape. And we would try to catch like the end of a song that they would play on the radio, where they played a little bit of the instrumental, and record that and then get another tape and dub it over to the like the other tape and just keep doing it back and forth to try to make a beat. It would be hella chopped
Dedication.
up. Yeah, bro. But it was funny, like back when on the Radio Shack mics and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, and then it's so interesting because it started there, and I didn't realize music would end up being my vocation because I had no like plan to do music full time or anything like that. But that's how I guess how it started for me.
How it started. Okay. That gives a context. So before I get into the stint with the label, I want to kind of go back to that era when you were doing shows here in town locally. Like at first,
Yeah.
if I recall, like I don't know if you remember, you were very kind of like reserved and not letting like I don't think you advertised the fact that you were an artist. At every show that I remember you being at, you had your camera, you were taking photos, and that's it. I think eventually you did an open mic or something, and then we were like, oh, so he raps and sings. Like I didn't have any idea that you were an artist. So
Yeah.
and once we found out, like it was this, you like I said, you did it at a high level. This is around the time when, if you were like a local artist, it wasn't expected that you had a budget for mixing and mastering and graphics and stuff.
Right.
But Deraj, I guess being a one man show, you mixed, mastered everything, you produced everything. Your art was just always at a high level, and I'm like, man, this guy is he's different. Like you were different, bro. Like, and
Yeah,
so, man, like I said, just like what drove that? Because you were saying that you didn't want to, you didn't envision yourself being a full-time artist. What drove
yeah.
you to doing art at a local level but at a high level at the same time?
Yeah, it's funny, man. They say black people don't blush, man. You out here making me blush, dude. Um, for me, I think, yeah, and it's so funny that you brought that up because I don't even think I remembered that because I moved down to Florida from Richmond. So context, I'm originally from, I always say like the DMV area, Maryland, Virginia. That's my old stomping ground. So grew up in Maryland up until about ninth grade, and then I moved down to Virginia with my mom. And then after I graduated high school, went through a year of college, I ended up coming down to Florida to get my bachelor's in digital arts and design at Full Sail. So my background, like I was very much in the visual arts direction. Like that was my trajectory. And then it ended up turning into I guess getting attention for the music side, mainly because like before I moved down to Virginia, I was already a part of a collective up there, and we were just kind of doing music as outlet, as hobby, as ministry, and then that just kind of translated down here. And that's probably why when you were saying I was showing up at shows, taking pictures, and all this other kind of stuff, because I was very much inundated in just visual arts, branding, design. So I think also too, that's why like whenever it came to the promotion, quote unquote, kind of marketing side of what I did, I just had an upper hand just because, part of my skill set is just, designing Photoshop. Like I was going to school for it. So I ended up having a presentation that looked like I remember Los, well, he goes by Loso now, but
Yeah.
I remember him telling me at one point, for those who don't know, he's a artist we grew up with in the Tampa area. We all kind of came up in the scene. Now he's doing this thing in battle rap. But I remember him specifically telling me, he was like, bro, when I first encountered you, I thought you were like signed to a label or something like that. Cause I'm looking at your merch table and your artwork and all this other kind of stuff. And nobody was kind of doing it, at least at the indie level, the way we were.
That's what I said. Yeah. That's what I said. Yeah.
The artwork, component. So I'm not unaware of that. And then on the music side, like I had learned how to produce, my own records, was decent at recording myself, but I also had a team back home where they would like engineer it for the most part and get a decent mix. Like if I listen back to it now, it's trash, but like, coming up, you know what I mean? Like it held its weight, but yeah, man, it was just a real interesting like time and just how it all kind of came about. But yeah, I guess that's the evolution of it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, so it's funny that he mentioned that, why like he thought you were signed. So eventually you doing shows, you doing your thing here in town, did it led to a deal. So like we're definitely going to the sync route. I just want to just help us, build context. So
Yep.
describe that season of going from being a local artist to being assigned independent artists. Like, what was that like for you?
Yeah, man. Like I was saying, it was kind of unexpected because part of my story is really unique because my introduction into the label that I eventually signed into, which was called Reflection Music Group. They're based out of Nashville, was because of my art. Like they had, and it's funny because at the time I wasn't even following the label, but I think they had put up a post that one of their artists was looking for like some merch designs or something like that. And somebody had sent me a tweet of that. And so I sent them like my portfolio and resume. They loved it. I designed one piece for them. Then they asked me to, design more stuff. And it just turned into me doing like art direction for them. And then they later found out that I did music because one of their, well, actually, I think I might have like casually kind of introduced it to it. I never wanted to be that guy where it's like, oh, I'm working for a label, let me slide you my mixtape kind of thing. Like I didn't even put it on the forefront, you feel me? But one of their artists was actually doing a show in downtown Orlando, and I came, and then after the show they were doing like a cypher, and I jumped in the cypher, and they heard me, kind of do my thing, and word got back was like, yo, you might want to like pay attention to this dude because like he's good. So that's how it kind of happened. And I wasn't prepared for it. Like I was very ignorant and kind of green when it came to anything like industry related on the business side. Like I knew how to create good music, but it's a different playing field when you start working alongside other artists who are full-time, you know what I mean, in this, and their main income is through their music, you know what I mean? And we're adjacent to one of the, biggest labels within our scene, which is Reach Records with the Cray and them guys. And so, it was a lot of newness. Like I didn't even know, like I remember when I first jumped on, they were telling me I had to like sign up for a PRO, like ASCAP. And I was like, I have no clue what that is. I just know they collect royalties. I don't know what kind of royalties. I didn't know, you know what I mean? It's like I just knew I had to do it. So, and honestly, I didn't really get a clear understanding into it really until I left the label. So I was there for like 4 or 5 years. I had no clue about any of that stuff. But I made it a priority once I left to get clear on it. But yeah, so it was very much like I didn't have a plan. I really was kind of learning on the job. And then after a while, kind of got my bearings and found out what I wanted out of music. And ultimately, it kind of led me to going fully independent and really, exploring this whole sync thing, which I'm sure we'll get into more.
Yeah, that's actually the following question, man. So with the label, I believe we spoke at a wedding of a mutual friend. And I think your first sync placement was with the label, correct?
Yeah.
So can you tell us about that, and then how that springboarded to pursuing sync after you departed the label?
What's interesting is like even before the sync stuff, like I guess the bookend of just my career and introduction to music. Because when I first signed with the label, the deal. So I had an attorney friend who helped me negotiate, my first deal with the label, and part of that was that because I had a basically like an album worth of music ready to go, which they wanted to scale down to an EP. And originally that EP was just going to get absorbed into the original terms of the agreement, but she was like, no, you should license it to them because it's already finished and, you're kind of presenting it to them. I had no clue what that meant, you know what I mean? Until later on it hit me. But she was able to put that in there where after a couple of years, that very first EP that I did called Mirrors of Medicine,
I remember that.
It was probably like, I can't remember, it was like, I think it might've been like 3-year term or something. I can't remember how long they had it. And then the rights reverted, or the control reverted back to me.
Wow, I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, bro. I didn't know that's what
dope.
was
That's dope.
But but then, I guess rewinding back to like 2014, 2015, the first year I was with the label, ESPN had reached out to the label because that was, again, speaking of that EP, they liked the one because it just dropped. They liked one of the songs on it and thought it would fit for their programming. And so for me, like, it was like, yo, what? You know what I mean? ESPN, how? Because for one, it's like, yeah, I'm signed with the label, but the song that they licensed was a song that I produced, I wrote, from the ground up. So it wasn't like the label had brought a team together. I was like, this was something that I created from the ground up, and ESPN wants to use it. And it's just kind of like a light bulb kind of switch where I was like, I want to do more of that because this is dope. Because me being just little old me at the time, quote unquote, was able to get a placement with ESPN. And I didn't notice at the time either. I was actually the first artist on the label to ever get a placement. So it's just so much stuff where it's just like the dots started to connect after the fact, which is so cool. So I knew like once I left the label, like that's the direction I wanted to really focus on, for that reason, and also a few other reasons on the monetary side as well. I just saw a lot of the upside to it. But yeah, I don't want to go too far with it.
No, we got time, brother. So it's all good. So that's dope, man, because like, wow, okay. So I knew a part of that story, but having the rights revert to, bro, that's crazy because you were like, you were a brand new artist. I mean, at that level. So the fact that she
Right.
had so everybody watching, it's important to understand the business and to have the right team together. Because had Deraj not had that attorney in his corner, who
Yeah.
knows? You know what I'm saying? So that's super important, man. Thank you for that.
Yeah, man. She
So
was
yeah,
she was heavy, bro. Like, yeah, she fought for me in some ways. That, like, there was some other things in that contract too that actually benefited me when I was ready to leave, type stuff, which I
oh,
won't go into. But it was, yeah, I had no clue, and it was very uncomfortable for me because I was directly interfacing with the label, but she kind of gave me some of the language to just kind of present to them. And they wanted me in the doors, and so we were to make it happen, but I had no clue of it. So that's why it's good to have a team and people who can represent you on your behalf, who have your best interests at hand to kind of handle some things that you may not know that that you trust. So
man, gems upon gems, bro. Thank you, man. So after you departed the label and you were deciding to go all in to sync, because you do a lot of things. You're a writer, you're a producer, you sing, rap. What's your process like when making songs for sync? Like, how do you approach a song? Like, let's just say you get a brief or whatever. Like, how do you approach that song for sync creation?
yeah, man, like one of the big shifts and it's one of the things I tell my students too, is when it comes to writing for this space, it's a mindset shift where um, you're not really writing for fans, you're writing for brands. Is one thing I always like to say. So the audience kind of shifts in a sense. So I'm trying to prioritize what would be best for said production or commercial or video game or whatever, and trying to really understand what they use in the past, you know what I mean? Because that can influence or inform what they might be wanting in the future. And the cool thing about it is that I love licensing so much that I feel like there's no wasted material. So even if I'm thinking of a particular brand, any competitor brand might be a good fit for that song, even if that song doesn't land with the intended brand. So for one, I'm just prioritizing the brand's needs even beyond like some of what I might like. I say beyond some of my preferences, even though I bring all of my creative instincts and my taste and all that kind of stuff to the writing process. So you know what I mean? Like you'll see a noticeable shift from, songs when I was on a label to songs that I've done, apart from the label. And it's just been an evolution of me. So yeah, I think partly like that's one side of it, prioritizing the brand, also making sure that the music is and I just put a post up about this, is like really dynamic, I guess. And when I say dynamic, it doesn't mean it has to be like bombastic, but like there's a good amount of like interest, like the music is telling a story in some way, you know what I mean? Like, and that's one thing I feel like hip hop kind of gets like sometimes gets a flag for, where there's a lot of repetition, you know what I mean, and especially in production, which can work for, like I've heard songs that have a lot of repetition get placements. But one of the critiques I always hear about hip hop is that it just kind of stays really consistent throughout, and it doesn't really have a lot of ebbs and flows or a lot of variation. So I'm always looking to create that interest within a song. Yeah, and then just I continue to just kind of study the market because understanding just, and it's one of the things, like there's so many parallels I feel like in the traditional versus like going the sync route, because in the same way, like the artists who are setting the standard and the tone for the rest of the industry. So say like who are the top guys in hip hop? You think about the Drakes, the Kendricks, the Kanyes, the Cardis, or whatever. You'll see a certain standard set, and there's like every artist underneath them kind of follows the template. Why? Because like they command the most market share within like the industry. And so if you're trying to monetize and scale a business in the commercial music space, it would be of your best interest to study who's actually commanding the most market share, because that's what people are paying for. They're validating that we want more of this by showing up, like by paying for tickets for shows, by buying merch, by streaming, yada yada. So it's just business. And so same thing on the licensing side. It's just like, all right, if I'm watching, a commercial and I'm starting to see trends or themes, from certain songs or from certain brands, and I might want to pay attention to that because they paid thousands of dollars for that piece of music. And so that then informs me to say, all right, this is important to them. This sound is doing something that serves their needs. So I might need to be aware of that, because again, they're my fans. And also too, on the artist side, like we'll make songs that are that resonate with our fans, and also serve the market, which the market is of being our fans. Same way on the sync side, is just like we're serving a market need, and our fans are just brands. And so the same level of research and again, this is for artists who are looking to try to scale and monetize their music. Like that's the strategy. So I'm always studying the market. I'm always prioritizing the brand's needs above my own. And I'm always trying to, really tell a story with the music overall. So that's a bit of my process.
That's a very well explained process. I felt like you probably gave us a glimpse into your class, because I felt like you just unpacked that question super well, and you gave a lot of good stuff. You gave a lot of good stuff, man. That I actually, when this is live and posted, I'm gonna rewind that and
nice.
Go back over that one. That was some good stuff, man. But yeah, with all the placements that you've had, man, like I follow you on Instagram, and you have a lot of placements, man. What's been your favorite and most memorable so far?
Well, my most memorable is always going to be my first. I feel like for everybody who's ever decided to move into the space and got their first placement, they'll never forget their first placement. So it kind of set the tone. So that ESPN, it's funny because I didn't even watch the programming. It was on ESPN's First Take. I never saw it today. I didn't even heard of it before we got the placement, but I remember it. So that's probably my most memorable. I think the one that probably gave me the most like off was the Cruella spot that we did. When we got the one of the trailers, like a TV trailer spot, back in 2020, that because I had a vision, and I wanted one of our songs to get into like a very, I don't know, like a major release, like a big, a big project. And that one just kind of solidified it for me. Like, man, we've been landing placement, but this is Disney, this is Cruella. You know what I mean? This is so I think that one did a lot for me. And then obviously the Black Panther one is probably one of the most noteworthy placements that we've gotten so far. That one was so crazy because we really weren't even expecting it. Like, we just got an email saying like, hey, just want to let you know this spot got confirmed for X amount of dollars for Black Panther Wakanda Forever. I'm like, what? You know what I mean? Like, it was very anticlimactic, but it hit. So, but those ones do it for me.
Okay, dope. And I don't know if you remember, we joked about the Wakanda placement. Like, man, that'll be because I think the movie hadn't dropped yet. So like, yo,
Yo,
man, that'll be cool if you got a placement or I got a placement in Wakanda Forever. And like you
I
posted like,
forgot
oh,
about
snap, we
that.
just talked about that.
I
Yeah,
forgot about that to just
yeah.
now. Wow, dude.
That's man. I spoke it, man. I spoke it over you, bro.
Dang, bro, I need you on the squad, bro. Let's go.
Man, it's so like I said, just observing your journey. Your sound is. I'm thinking local artist Deraj was very eclectic. You still are. You know,
Yep.
Deraj who does sync is very modern, and he sounds like what you can hear now, man. Who are your influences, man? I feel like you pull from a lot of different artists and sounds, man. Like I want to know genuinely like who you like, who you listen to, who you kind of you know
Yeah,
glean
man.
from.
Yeah, I'll keep it all the way 100. Well, first of all, what's interesting is that when I when I started sync, I almost feel like you were talking about the me being eclectic. Like the pre being signed to a label, Deraj was way more experimental. So you know, by I originated with a East Coast sound, you know what I mean? And so, I got a lot of influences from, the Jay-Z's, the Eminems, the Wu-Tangs, the Nas's, kind of coming up, and it evolved after time. But so like that's my foundation. But when I actually started to kind of come into my own, I was like all over the place. I was rapping over worship songs and rock songs and neo soul songs. Like I was just like whatever idea I had, I was just trying to figure out if I can make it actually work. You know what I mean? So that was me, before the label, and then when I signed to the label, like I gave myself permission to go a little bit more, to focus on just the sound that was more current and try to figure out how to bring my own voice into it. And then when I stepped into the sync space full on, I felt like I kind of got some of the experimentation back, even though but it's in a different way because I've segmented myself where Deraj has a very big dynamic cinematic hip hop kind of vibe, and also I float into like some top 40-ish type stuff, from time to time. So that's kind of my lane with Deraj. But then also I have a whole nother artist project called Sunny O, which is, a alt R&B vintage funk, type vibe where I'm like singing falsetto and it's like very 70s and 80s influence, whatever. You know what I mean? So I gave myself the permission to be all of me, or Sync rather gave me that permission to be all of me, where I felt like being signed to a label, I had to somewhat stick to a particular consistency. Being on Sync, I have probably like 3 or 4 artist aliases that nobody knows about, you know what I mean? But it's just because I can, you know what I mean? And all of them actually, funny thing is I have another artist project called Daisy Chain. That project doesn't have as many followers on like IG or anything, or any social metrics except for streaming. Like that project actually streams better than my Deraj project, which is crazy because it's just a side project that I don't like. We actually put a lot into the music, but the front facing kind of artist persona, it's not anywhere near the amount of energy that I put into the Deraj, but it streams better, which is crazy. But back to your original question, as far as influences for me, like personally, like just coming up, just music in general, like the Pharrells, the Kanyes, the Gambinos, like the Outkast, you know what I mean? Like that's like those type artists who have a really distinct, fingerprint on their sound, inspire me like consistently coming up. When I kind of got into the sync space, like I was studying guys like, Bo Williams, The Siege, Easy McCoy, like they really cornered the market with this big cinematic kind of hip hop sound, and somewhat kind of laid a template, but just became inspiration for me because I was like, yo, I love this sound, and I know I can do it, and that's why I was able to bring in some of like the rock influence that I had. I always like to try to blend genres together, and I like to emote and be aggressive and yada yada yada. So those are like some of the folk that have inspired me just as a whole with music. And then when it came to sync, as what I do under the Deraj umbrella, like those guys really kind of help me cast vision a bit to see where I fit in the space.
That makes sense. Outkast, Pharrell, the whole tie to VA. That all makes sense. It
Yeah,
definitely makes sense. Now I can
Timberland.
hear it. Yeah, that it makes sense. It makes sense. I get it. I get it. Dope though. Super dope. You probably dive into this with your students, and I'll give you a chance to plug everything at the very end. You probably already talked about this before. What are some pitfalls or things to avoid that you would kind of guide a new artist? Let's say you have a new rapper, songwriter, interested in sync. Like, what would Deraj, with all his years of experience, advise this new artist to avoid?
Yeah. So I'm very big on, and not just because I have a course, but I'm very big on learning from like others who have gotten to where you're looking to get. And so like I'm a very big advocate of just mentorship or just learning, or paying, to learn from, those who understand it. And mainly because, and this is going back to my attorney who I mentioned, she's also like one of my mentors. And she used to always tell me, just like, don't, like, it's cool to be able to try to figure stuff out on your own, but like cut that learning curve in half. Like, you don't feel like you always have to, DIY everything. Like, if somebody knows if somebody has access to the information that you're looking to get, like, figure out how to get it from them, whether that's, doing an apprenticeship or paying them for the information. Um, just because you just learn so many things that you wouldn't even think about, just out of pure ignorance, because you just don't know what you don't know. So I would say first, like, find somebody else who has uh, experience in the space and who's trustworthy and who's, got the reps under their belt. Learn from them. But aside from that, too, I would say I always tell people too, like, instead of just watching television, like, start like really listening to what's on the screen, because it's a lot of free information there, because brands will literally tell you what type of music that they're wanting because they're paying for it. And how do you know they're paying for it? Because it's in like something that they're publicizing. And so that's another thing. Like, it just becomes free education to say, like, all right, if I'm watching, All American, how many songs did they use within an episode? How many genres did they use within that episode? What were the moods? You know what I mean? Like, why did they choose this particular song during this particular scene? And why did they use that part of a song within that particular scene? Because if there's, 3.5 minutes of music and they're only using 20 seconds of it, they use that 20 seconds for a reason. Why? Like, start listening to it. And it will kind of help you infer some things that, you might not have, thought about initially. So I say, start listening to the stuff that you're watching. I'm trying to think of a third thing to really look out for, but I would probably say, like, don't pitch your music, which might be counterintuitive, like, before you really like have a clear understanding of what this space is. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna retract that one. I got a better one. And this is a cheat code. Collaborate with people who are in the space. Like, if you don't understand this space, I wouldn't pitch your own music. I would start trying to collaborate with people who are in the space, because you may be able, like you'll have more chance of learning, and also landing something, because they'll be able to course correct you a bit, and you can leverage their network to get ahead and learn, versus just trying to go at it alone. Because if they're landing consistent placements, that means they know something and they're doing something right. And so you might want to align yourself with them and see how you can legitimately add value. Like, I wouldn't just go up to anybody who's landing plays and be like, yo, I love your style, let's work. You know what I mean? Like, I get so many like DMs like that, I don't reply to them. You know what I mean? Because it's not adding any value to me. Like, and truly, like, you want to figure out, like, yo, if I'm listening to, Terrell, like, I saw that, Terrell has, or just got an upcoming placement, or I see the type of people he collaborates, or I see the type of music that he's putting out. Like, I might want to see if I can actually add value in any way, where it's like, yo, maybe I can play and create a, production similar to what he's done in the past. Like, maybe that's a value to him, or maybe I could top line in a way that is familiar to something that he's done. Like, I guarantee you, if you send me, like, if you come at me as a genuinely interested in what I'm doing, and you've taken the time to really study like what I'm putting out, and you send me something that is in line of what, like, I'll pay more attention to that than if you just like, even if you got a ton of followers. I have people with a ton of followers hit me like, yo, let's work. I love what you do. And I'm just like, okay, like I don't know you. It's like I'm not just finna connect out of nowhere. Just, and also too, because like again, like just like everybody, but I'm very particular and intentional with my time. And so I'm just not going to give my time to everybody. I have enough people to collaborate with at this point. Thankfully, like I've been blessed to be at that place. But to get on like, like my radar now, like it just takes that time to just do that research to see is this what I need. And it don't even have to be musicians. Like I have people who know me so much, they know I like pizza, and they might just offer. Like I've had students offer me pizza like at a event, and that just, you know what I mean? Like it just gets my attention because they take that time to learn that about me. You know what I mean? So, stuff like that I'll probably like give to folks starting up, like studying the market, like learn from somebody who knows what to do, who's been there, study the market, or again, listening to what's on TV, and then collaborating. Like those are the tips I would give to folk. Like, and literally that last one could probably like get you further even in the first two. You'll probably learn the first two if you collaborate with somebody who knows them. If that makes sense. So free game.
Free game, and we're not even in his class, but he just dropped some gems and some game. But that's very true, man. With you, with all your wisdom and experience, if you could go back to the very beginning, being on the label, getting your placement, or first, departing the label and starting to really go all in for sync, like what would you do differently, or would you put more attention into a certain like sound? I mean, hindsight is 2020, but I'm always interested to see what you would have changed back then. Yeah,
the businessman in me says I would have just started with sync because I feel like everybody who I like, some of my collaborators who I work with who are like further along, had made way more money than me, like got way more places than me. Like I feel like a lot of them started around the like mid 2010s, like 2013, 2014, 2015. And they're just reaping the benefits of it now, where it's just like, fees were higher, you know what I mean? Like the market was less saturated, even though like the saturation thing, I still like I don't feel like we've really tapped into all of what is there for the indie artists with licensing, because it's still very unknown to most indie artists. So even though more people know about it and saturation gets thrown about, I don't really feel like it's that. But I do know there was less people then, and so the market share was just less. And I don't think people really knew about it and didn't really think about it as like something really worthy of pursuing, because it's like, it was still that mindset of like, oh, you're making jingles and yada yada yada. It was like, nah, Cass is making 5-6 figures a placement type stuff. You know what I mean? So I'm like, so the businessman side of me was that, but part of me too is just like, I wish I would have known more about the business side of music early on, mainly just because I would have probably been able to leverage the licensing as alongside my artistry. Because effectively I had a label kind of working on my behalf, and also if I really understood, I guess the power that I have as a creator with the assets that we're making, which is our music, then I would have probably been able to really maneuver a little differently and prioritize certain things differently, and really been able to kind of scale on both ends, financially and on this kind of social equity side with running my numbers up and stuff. Because at the end of the day, when I was with the label, I had tens of thousands of followers and millions of streams, but I was still broke, you know what I mean? And so that was probably one of the things too, that as I got to a certain place, it was like, I'm getting older, I'm married, it's like I've been, putting a lot of energy into the music, and I just haven't seen it. And I don't even think it's because of label or like any of that kind of stuff. I just think, for one, I was such a different artist. So I don't even know if like everybody knew what to do with me. I didn't know what to do with me. But two, like I also think I was just kind of wired to like lead a thing. And that was one of the things too. It was partly too the financial stuff that made me lead, but also it was like I just felt a deep sense of like, I just feel like I need to be at the front of this thing. And it gave me a bit more of like empowerment to like when I stepped away and started running to kind of believe in myself more, because I think I deferred too much maybe to the label at times. But it was the best decision I made, and I think it was best for me, even though I love the label. I was just talking to my old manager a couple weeks back. So I don't have a bad label experience. It's just, it's like when your purpose, like when you kind of outgrow where you are, or your purpose just becomes more clear. It's just like nothing, no amount of money or time or whatever would get me to stay, because I just feel like I need to go this route. That's how clear I was. So that's probably the only thing I would do differently, is just having more awareness of the business side of music, so that I could have really leveraged everything that was at my disposal, quote unquote. You know what I mean?
It makes a lot of sense, man. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for just being so open and transparent about everything. And that kind of goes with the next question. You've been if anybody follows Deraj on Instagram or whatever, he's very open and transparent about his success and income. If you want to put it out there, I don't know if you want me to put it out there, but you've been very open about the amount of income that you made with Sync and everything over the last couple of years. Do you think, for the person who's a skeptic that's watching, do you think that your circumstances are unique? Like, well, of course, Deraj is where he's at. He had a label. He was doing this. He went to school for music. I mean, he went to like a school for the arts. He did all this stuff. Or do you think that you're not unique per se, in that others can kind of not have your same journey but have a similar path?
Yeah, I feel like, so I'll try to answer as honestly as I can, because I feel like one thing that makes me unique is, I don't even like, maybe just the exposure with being around other entrepreneurs like in the label. Like, I just privy to different like ways to maneuver with stuff. But as far as like just compare, because like when I left the label, it is almost like I was starting with a clean slate, because I left an industry segment where everybody knew me and went into a different industry segment where nobody knew me. And so that's why I say, like, I don't think I'm such a special case when it comes to, this, I guess, the quote unquote success I've had, mainly because like when I started, I didn't even like take any of my old music with me. Like, I literally took a year, and I'm doing all this stuff that I'm telling people to do. Like, I took a course, like me and Mark were in the same course. I took a course. How long was that course, Mark? It was like, I can't remember, was it 6-month course or was it less than that?
I think 6 months sounds right. Yeah. I think it started in like August and went to like February-ish, if I recall correctly.
Right. So it was about a 6-month course. Went hard in that. After the course, hit the ground running. I was already collaborating while we were in the course. And I had a goal that year to try to write 100 songs in a year, mainly because I knew, one, I needed more music, because I couldn't, not that I couldn't, but it wouldn't have been efficient to use any of my back catalog, because it was still tied to the label, where it has to go through too many clearances to make anything happen. So one, I had to just, go from, 0 to 100, literally, when it came to my catalog. Two, I'm like connecting with other supervisors, like agencies and stuff like that, who don't know a Deraj, you know what I mean? And it's weird, because it's like, yeah, I've had numbers and stuff, but I didn't even really lead with my numbers. I always led with whatever need I saw with them. I was creating that need, and I was just showing up and being personable. And I think that's the only thing that really makes me more unique. Outside of like, I just have different skill sets, but I feel like there's people who write better than me, you know what I mean? Like, I like their vocal tone better than mine, all that kind of stuff, that like, even who are in sync, that I've just kind of surpassed, quote unquote, as far as just like number of placements and all that kind of stuff. And I don't even really think it's because I'm that much better of an artist, creative, yada, yada. I think it's just because I made it a priority to make more music and just figure out how I can meet a need. You know what I mean? Like, that's where I feel like what makes me unique. And that's what I teach my students, even still, like, because I've seen, this is the reason why I say this. And I say this like with all humility. And it was partly even when I came into the space why I knew like I could actually do it, because I saw people landing placements with songs that I knew I could write better than. It's just like I'm hearing the songs like, yo, I can make a song better than this. You know what I mean? Like if this can get a placement, I can get a placement type stuff. You know what I mean? So all that to say is just like people value, music differently, yada yada. But like sometimes I think you might find, songs on there is like, it's cool, but it ain't nothing crazy. But they make money off of it. You know what I mean? So that's why I'm like, I'm beyond all of the, like I've had the millions of streams and all this other kind of stuff, and I was broke. And so that's why I was like, yo, I'm gonna figure out a way to monetize my music in a legitimate way where I can regain my control back. And that's why I've just seen people do it before me, and it just gave me encouragement to go, do it on my own. So that's why I'm just like, I really don't think it's anything special, you know what I mean? Outside of it is just relationship building and trying to meet a need at its simplest form, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. That was more just coming from like, when you have people, this with the sinkholes from people from all walks of life. You have very experienced people and brand new people to sync. So some people might see you and your followers on Instagram and be like, oh, well, of course he, So I just wanted to kind of clear that up for anyone. So, and you did just that.
And that's, well, I was gonna say that's one of the things I tell my students too when they're like considering to like opt into enroll into the training that we do. Because I know that's a thing. It's just like, bro, you should be signed to a label. Of course, you're out here getting placements. You know what I mean? But like I've walked my students through who have no label experience. You know what I mean? Like nowhere near the type of like experiences that I've had, and they are landing placements consistently. You know what I mean? So that's why it's just like it doesn't really matter. And actually, even the some of my collaborators that I work with, like they don't have the type of resume that I have, but they'll land placements. That's why I say collaborate, just by proxy of being connected to somebody who knows how to get into the space. They'll land placements. And so there's people who have no social media following, any of that kind of stuff, 6-7 figure earners in the space. You know what I mean? Like I know them personally. So that's why it's just like you can be the biggest and you can be a nobody and kill it. You know what I mean? So
how much do you think that your like overall brand plays in? Because I mean, we're kind of like dancing on both sides of this fence here, but like anyone who follows you can see that you have a super, super solid brand. Mm-hmm. And like now more than ever, like I think it used to be a lot more realistic for someone to be like totally behind the scenes, have no social presence whatsoever and kill it. Do you think that's still a possibility? Or like, what are your thoughts on like having a brand even in the sync space?
Yeah. So I always like to say it like this. I don't think having a brand is a prereq to succeeding in licensing. But I definitely say it helps. You know what I mean? Like the more exposure, the more visible, the more of a, more well-rounded presentation, you know what I mean? You have definitely aids to it. Because people are fickle, you know what I mean? It's like we judge based off of appearances. And if it look like it's popping, like I'm probably gonna give it a second look. And also too, like I will say there's opportunities that come across that are kind of only reserved for people who actually have something kind of going on. I've seen briefs come through where they're looking for emerging artists, you know what I mean, to kind of break. So there's different kind of segments of like sync that you could kind of get your foot in. But by no means does that disqualify. That's one of the things I like about sync is I don't feel like it really disqualifies you. You know what I mean? Like it's one of the places that really prioritizes just the music alone. And all of the other things are like cherries on top. But yeah, it's just like you can do it as a nobody, and that's where I advocate for it so much, because I just think it gives hope to the creator, because I needed that. You know what I mean? Like I was at like one of the stories I always share is just like, bro, I was signed to a label. I remember we came from off a tour. I can't remember where we were at, but we had some spot dates, and I was out, for the weekend, doing a tour or whatever. And the shows we had, they were like dope. You know what I mean? It's like, it's one of them shows, like I wish every show was like this. And so I flew back home, top of the week. And during this time I was signed as a label, I was still working full time as well. And so I always kind of held like this, feeling like a bit of an imposter, you know what I mean? Because it's like, I wasn't really a full-time artist, but it kind of looked like I was, you know what I mean? And so that was always the thing. I shouldn't have felt like that, but that's how I felt. But I just remember like going to work that morning, pulling into the parking lot and like turn the car off, and I was just like bawling like in the whip because I was just like, yo, for the life of me, I can't figure out how to get out of this place. I just feel like I'm living this double life, and I really want to be doing this, and I'm doing everything I can to really like figure out how to make it work, and it's not working. You know what I mean? And it hurt, you know what I mean? And I just like was kind of losing a lot of steam and just like, you know what I mean? This is a very depressed like time for me. And so that's why I say like sync is one of those places that really just gives like hope, you know what I mean, to be aligned. And it's one of them things like just that little push can like get people, that first placement can really renew somebody's motivation, because it's like, man, like my music is worth something. You know what I mean? It's like a multi-million-dollar brand was willing to pay me for my music, and I'm just me in my bedroom. You know what I mean? So that's why I feel like sorry, long way to get to get an answer to your question, but I do feel like it can play a role for sure. So run all your numbers up. It's gonna create more leverage for you. You know what I mean? But don't think you need to have that to really make a sustainable living off of your music in sync. So
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. And part of the reason I brought that up is I don't know if it was on a podcast or talking to a friend the other day, but I actually heard that like some of the bigger companies like BMG are actually starting to ask for like Instagram links with some of the artists that they're sending, because like
yeah,
some of these shows, like they want to be repping real artists. Like
yeah.
everyone kind of knows that a lot of these sync bands are fake bands now. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, and that's the thing, and that's why I always say too. Like, I think it's good to just study the market and just kind of see where the trends are going. But even still, it's just like I know that I always kind of, and this I maybe it's just a stubborn mindset to a degree. It's just like, man, if I got a song that fits what they need, I just feel like it's a rare case where it's like, I'm just gonna not use this. You know what I mean? If it's fitting what they need for the spot, and I think partly too because the industry kind of set a precedence like that, where it's like we're gonna prioritize the music. You know what I mean? But I do know like there's times where like we've gotten placements and they actually wanted the song to be released. You know what I mean? But it's very rare. You know, like I never get those requests, but sometimes they do. And so, I mean, it's stuff to be aware of, but at least up until this point, like I just haven't seen it be a hindrance to people starting in this space. And I'm like, my students are still getting in there and landing stuff just right where they are. You know what I mean? So, but I don't think it's something to ignore, but I do think it's something to like be aware of, but still just push and just try to like, if your goal is to try to add value, it's really hard to get denied when you're authentically adding value, like as far as what I've seen. So, but I could be wrong, but that's from this vantage point, from what I've seen. If it's hitting and is meeting the need, then you're good. But so
You mentioned a lot about students. So explain what you do in your class, because I'm very interested.
Man. I appreciate it. So I think about 2 years ago, we started a training called the Indie Music Accelerator. If you search it, you probably won't find it because it's kind of very low key. But what it is, and we actually just kind of revamped it now, where it's a 12-week training where we go through literally from the ground, sync 101, all the way to like landing consistent placements. And we do everything from bringing in industry experts to listen and review your music, to group coaching sessions, to one-on-one accountability. We have a private community where you collaborate with others. Yeah, man. It's been it was something that I wanted to do for a long time, because one, I'm a benefactor of a course, but also two, like the way my mind thinks, very strategic. And so I knew, like, we were on Clubhouse for a while, like just showing up every week back when Clubhouse was a thing. Like showing up, just giving free game, like bringing a bunch of like resources, and we grew a dope following. But one of the things I was seeing is that we were kind of getting some of the same questions, and people were excited about licensing, but it didn't really seem like people took the next step to take action. And so I wanted to create a type of framework where people could go through and actually know, like, where do I start? you know, how do I make the music that needs to be, that brands are willing to consistently pay for? You know, how do I pitch it and how do I scale it? You know what I mean? And so we put all that into a 12-week program. And it's been dope. I mean, we've had, you know, I just got a text from one of my students the other day. He said he got 11 of his songs, you know, and I can't remember the network. I don't even know if he told me the network, but either way, he said got paid upfront for all of them. And like, he also said, and it's funny because he kind of took it further than I did. He's actually in a couple commercials, like acting, and then also like in a couple movies acting as well. So he's combining everything he can into it. I had another student who's landed. I talked to him. I caught him. He landed like 80 something placements or something like that. I was like, bro, you're doing way better than I did when I first started out, because I did not have that kind of resume out the gate. But yeah, man. So it's been really dope. You know, if you're interested in learning more about it, just hit me up on IG. If you go to the link in my bio, you can book a call with me and my team, and we'll do what we call our sync discovery calls, and feel like to see if we're able to, you know, help or point you in the right direction, someone can, or to give you some homework or something like that. So yeah, man, that's the Indie Music Accelerator, and we're trying to, you know, scale into other things, but I'm very intentional with not overgrowing and, you know, doing too many things at once. So we're kind of parking it here for a while until we feel comfortable enough to kind of scale into some other ideas that we're entertaining. So, but yeah, that's the training that we do.
Okay, dope, man. So you have your hands in a bunch of stuff. We're at the halfway point of the year. What other things you got in the works, man? What other placements, or I guess as much as you can share. Do you have any side projects in the works with, you know, your side bands and anything like that?
Yeah, man, it's been like a building year for me this year and last year. Just trying to get the foundation right. I started, or I guess kind of reposition my company, See and Hear. So we're a boutique music house prioritizing hip hop, pop, and R&B for TV, film, ads, and trailers. So we've been kind of onboarding slowly, just, you know, artists and projects that we feel like we can help serve and push, you know, to the market with our, you know, within our network. So kind of developing some other projects with even some of my, you know, alumni. They've kind of come back, and we're working with them as well. So doing that, just, you know, building a framework there for the company and for the course. I'm working on my own music. I've been dropping like a single a month if you've been keeping up, which has been doing well. We got a couple we got a good number of placements with them, but some noteworthy ones. We got like a Domino's spot in a spot with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and some other stuff pending. But yeah, and I'm trying to like get a good balance, because like getting into the weeds of like teaching, and then, you know, owning a company, and then also trying to be your own artist, like, you know, you got to really partition your time. And so trying to work on some special Deraj stuff as well. Trying to kind of reimagine my sound a little bit, still in line with what we're doing, but just taking a little bit more liberties. So yeah, those are some of the things that are kind of in the works, just, you know, slow and steady, but trying to grow deep, you know what I mean, and plant roots really deep, but so we can kind of scale, you know, higher when the time comes. So,
man, this has been so insightful, just so wonderful. You, like I said, you dropped a lot of stuff, man. We dropped a lot of good information. We're looking forward to the rest of the year and what you have in store. If we're trying to wrap up, we're going to wrap up here soon. He's a busy man. You saw all the things he has his hands in, so we're not going to hold him too much longer. If you have a question for Deraj, please comment below. And Deraj, if you want to plug all your socials in the meantime, you know, while we get some questions.
I'm at Just Deraj everything. So that's JUSTDERAJ. Twitter, IG, Facebook, YouTube, everywhere. My company is See and Hear. So See and Hear. Website is weseeandhear.com. So if you want to hit us up, shoot us some music, you're more than welcome to. I'm trying to think what else, man. I mean, that's pretty much it. Like, I try to, you know, keep it a little low key, but, you know, we're here for you. If you're seriously considering like where to start when it comes to licensing your music, like definitely hit the link in bio on my IG and just book a call with us, and we'll talk through it.
I didn't know if you had any questions, Mark, in the meantime.
No, I think the only thing that popped up for me mainly was kind of the branding stuff, because that's something I
Okay.
see getting talked about a ton. But of
Yeah.
course, if you're watching the replay as well, comment below and we can shoot those to Deraj as well. And if you want to connect, obviously we'll have all the links in the description. Any closing thoughts?
I guess only closing thoughts I would say, just to encourage like anybody watching, man, like if you feel like you're at a place where like that hope is kind of fizzled out when it comes to your music, man, like just know your music is worth it, sink or not. You know what I mean? Like whichever direction you decide to go, like the gift that you have, like is not there for no reason. It's a gift for a reason. You know what I mean? It's been given to you, and it's there to also not only minister to other people, but to minister to yourself. So don't downplay like what you have inside of you, whether it's making money or not. But just know that you literally can take it as far as you desire to go. Just know that the option is there for you. So keep pushing. We're rooting for you.
There's nothing to add. No closing thoughts to add, man. Deraj, he killed it. Deraj, yeah. Hit him up, reach out to him. I don't know if anybody has any questions in the chat. I'm not for sure. If they do, once Deraj heads out, we'll hang out for a tad bit, do a little Q&A, network and build. Deraj, you're free to hang out, but like I said, I know you're busy and stuff like that. So
yeah, I do got to slide, but I do want to say, like, man, shout out to the Sinkhole, right, man. I appreciate y'all bringing me here and let me talk. I love talking about this stuff, and also just creating a platform to talk about this stuff, because like we were talking about it earlier, like there's just not a lot of it's weird. It's a lot of information about it, but it's not at the same time, or at least it's not as widespread as you would hope it to be. Yeah. And it's just it's just another avenue, another option for artists that I don't think they know is there for them. So I appreciate y'all for putting this together and sharing the gems.
We appreciate you.
Appreciate
it.
Yeah,
for real.
Cool. Well, let's go ahead. We'll end the broadcast then. Thanks again. And then, yeah, as always, of course, you guys, if you're watching, join the Sinkhole Discord server. Link will be down in the description, as well as Deraj's links and all that good stuff. And thank you guys for being with us, and we'll see you next month. Right on. Take care.